You've probably heard about manifesting money, right? Well, what if I told you that I actually did it? Not just a little bit of cash, but millions. And I did it using techniques from a guy named Neville Goddard. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds too good to be true. But stick with me, because I'm going to show you exactly how it happened. Let's go back a few years. Picture this. I was drowning in debt, working a job I hated, and feeling like I was stuck in a never-ending cycle of just barely getting by. Every month was a struggle to pay the bills. I'd look at my bank account and feel this pit in my stomach. You know that feeling, right? When you're not sure if you can make rent this month or if you'll have to choose between groceries and keeping the lights on. That was my life, day in and day out. I tried everything to make more money. I picked up extra shifts at work, started a side hustle selling stuff online, even tried my hand at day trading. But nothing seemed to work. It felt like the universe was against me, like I was destined to always be broke. I'd see people on social media living these amazing lives, going on vacations, buying new cars, and I'd think, why not me? What am I doing wrong? The worst part was the effect it had on my relationships. I couldn't go out with friends because I couldn't afford it. I was always stressed, which made me snappy with my family. I felt like a failure, like I was letting everyone down. It was a dark time, and I couldn't see a way out. Then, one day, something happened that changed everything. I was scrolling through YouTube, looking for videos on how to make money fast. You know, the usual get-rich-quick stuff. But instead, I came across a video about this guy named Neville Goddard. The title was something like, How to Manifest Your Dreams Using Your Imagination. Now, I'll be honest. At first, I rolled my eyes. I thought it was just more of that woo-woo law of attraction stuff that never seemed to work for me. But something made me click on it anyway. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was just curiosity. Whatever it was, I'm glad I did. As I watched, I was surprised. This wasn't like the other manifestation videos I'd seen before. Neville Goddard wasn't talking about vision boards or repeating affirmations 100 times a day. He was talking about something different, something that seemed, well, possible. The basic idea was this: your imagination creates your reality, not in some vague, mystical way, but in a real, practical sense. Goddard said that if you could imagine something vividly enough and feel it as if it were already real, you could actually make it happen in your life. Now, I know what you're thinking. It sounds crazy, right? That's exactly what I thought too. But here's the thing. I was desperate enough to try anything, and Goddard's techniques seemed simple enough. He wasn't asking me to buy anything or join some expensive program. He was just saying to use my imagination in a specific way. So, I decided to give it a shot. What did I have to lose, right? I figured I'd try it for a month and see what happened. If it didn't work, well, I'd just be back where I started. But if it did work, well, that could change everything. Little did I know, this decision would set me on a path that would completely transform my life. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But over the next few years, I would go from being broke and hopeless to manifesting millions of dollars. And it all started with learning how to use my imagination in a way I never had before. Now, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm telling you this because I want you to know that if I could do it, you can too. The techniques I learned from Neville Goddard aren't some secret magic that only works for special people. They're tools that anyone can use if they're willing to put in the time and effort. In the rest of this video, I'm going to break down exactly what I did, step by step. I'll show you the specific techniques I used, how I applied them in my daily life, and the results I saw. I'll share the ups and downs, the moments of doubt, and the breakthroughs that kept me going. But before we dive into all that, I want you to know something important. This isn't about getting rich quick or finding some magic shortcut to success. It's about changing the way you think, the way you see yourself, and the way you interact with the world around you. It's about tapping into a power that you already have inside you, the power of your imagination. So are you ready to learn how I went from being broke and desperate to manifesting millions? Are you ready to discover how you can use these same techniques in your own life? Then let's get started. Trust me, what you're about to learn could change everything for you, just like it did for me. After watching that first video about Neville Goddard, I was intrigued, but still skeptical. I mean, could changing the way I used my imagination really make that big of a difference in my life? It seemed too simple to be true. But I decided to dig deeper. I started by reading everything I could find about Goddard and his teachings. I borrowed books from the library, watched more videos, and even joined online forums where people discussed his techniques. The more I learned, the more I realized that this wasn't just some fluffy, feel-good philosophy. There was real substance to it. One of the first things that struck me was how different Goddard's approach was from other manifestation techniques I'd tried before. He wasn't talking about just thinking positive thoughts or repeating affirmations. Instead, he was talking about actually experiencing your desires in your imagination as if they were already real. This was a game changer for me. Up until then, I'd always thought about what I wanted in terms of the future. Someday, I'll have enough money. One day, I'll be successful. But Goddard was saying to imagine it as if it were happening right now. So I decided to give it a try. I started with something small, just to test it out. At the time, I was having trouble paying my electricity bill. It wasn't a huge amount, maybe about $200, but it felt like a mountain to me. Following Goddard's teachings, I closed my eyes and imagined myself opening my mailbox. In my imagination, I pulled out an envelope. I could feel the paper between my fingers as I opened it. Inside was a check for $200, exactly what I needed for the bill. I imagined the feeling of relief washing over me, the smile on my face as I realized I could pay the bill without stress. I did this for about 10 minutes that first night. To be honest, it felt a little silly at first, but I committed to doing it every night for a week, just to see what would happen. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 3 days later, I got a call from my aunt. We weren't particularly close and didn't talk often. She said she'd been thinking about me and asked how I was doing. Without even thinking about it, I mentioned that things were tight, and I was worried about some bills. To my complete shock, she offered to help. She said she had some extra money that month and would be happy to send me $200. I was floored. It was exactly the amount I had imagined, coming from a completely unexpected source. Was it just a coincidence? Maybe, but it was enough to make me want to keep exploring these techniques. I mean, what if it wasn't a coincidence? What if this really worked? That small success gave me the boost I needed to dive deeper into Goddard's teachings. I started applying his techniques to bigger things in my life. I imagined myself in a job I loved, one that paid well and gave me a sense of purpose. I imagined my bank account growing, having enough money not just to pay bills, but to enjoy life. One of the key things I learned during this time was the importance of feeling. Goddard emphasized that it wasn't enough to just picture what you wanted. You had to feel it as if it were already real. This was harder than it sounded. At first, when I tried to imagine having a lot of money, all I felt was the absence of it in my real life. It was frustrating, but I kept at it, practicing every day. Slowly, I got better at generating the feeling of abundance, even when my actual circumstances hadn't changed yet. I also learned about what Goddard called living in the end. This meant behaving and thinking as if your desire had already been fulfilled. So instead of constantly worrying about money, I started acting as if I already had enough. This was challenging, especially when bills came due, but I stuck with it, reminding myself that my imagination was creating my reality. During this time, I started to notice small changes in my life. Opportunities seemed to pop up more frequently. I'd get unexpected refunds or find money I'd forgotten about. These weren't life-changing amounts, but they were enough to keep me motivated and believing that something bigger was possible. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were plenty of times when doubt crept in. I'd look at my bank account or get another rejection from a job application, and I'd think, who am I kidding? This isn't working. The old feelings of hopelessness and frustration would come rushing back. In those moments, I'd go back to Goddard's teachings. He talked about persistence, about not giving up even when things seemed darkest. So I doubled down on my imaginal acts, picturing myself successful and abundant, even when my current reality seemed to contradict it. Looking back, I realized that this period was crucial. It was laying the foundation for everything that was to come. I was learning to trust in something I couldn't see yet, to believe in possibilities rather than limitations. And even though I didn't know it at the time, these skills would be essential for the big changes that were just around the corner. As I continued to practice Goddard's techniques, I started to notice something interesting. My attitude towards money was changing. Before, I'd always seen money as something scarce, something I had to struggle and fight for. But as I consistently imagined abundance, I found myself feeling more relaxed about finances. This shift in mindset led to some practical changes too. I started looking for opportunities I might have missed before. I applied for jobs that previously I would have thought were out of my league. I even started a small side business, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the confidence for. And then, about 6 months after I first discovered Goddard's teachings, something big happened. I got a job offer that was way beyond anything I'd ever imagined for myself. It was in a field I was passionate about, with a salary that was double what I'd been making before. At first I could hardly believe it, but then I remembered all the times I'd imagined myself in a job just like this one. It was almost eerie how closely it matched what I'd been picturing in my mind. This was the first major breakthrough, the moment when I really started to believe that there might be something to these techniques after all. But it was just the beginning. Over the next few years, I would go on to manifest even bigger things, including the millions I mentioned at the start of this video. But here's the thing. It wasn't just about the money. As I continued to use Goddard's techniques, I found that every aspect of my life was improving. My relationships got better, my health improved, and I felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment that I'd never experienced before. Now, I want to be clear about something. This wasn't about sitting back and waiting for good things to happen. Using these techniques didn't mean I didn't have to take action in the real world. In fact, I found myself taking more action than ever before, but it was inspired action. It came from a place of confidence and possibility, rather than fear and scarcity. As we move forward in this video, I'm going to break down the specific techniques I used in more detail. I'll show you exactly how I applied them in my daily life and how you can do the same. We'll talk about visualization, about feeling the wish fulfilled, and about living in the end. But more than that, I want to share with you the mindset shifts that made all of this possible. Because at its core, what I learned from Neville Goddard wasn't just about manifesting money or success. It was about understanding the incredible power of our own minds and how we can use that power to shape our reality. So if you're feeling stuck right now, if you're struggling with money or any other aspect of your life, I want you to know that there's hope. The same techniques that worked for me can work for you too. It's not about luck or special talents. It's about learning to use your imagination in a way that aligns with the life you want to create. In the next section, we're going to dive deep into the first major technique I learned from Goddard: visualization. I'll show you exactly how I used it, the mistakes I made along the way, and how you can apply it in your own life starting today. So stick around, because what you're about to learn could be the key to unlocking a whole new level of abundance in your life. One of the first and most powerful techniques I learned from Neville Goddard was visualization. Now you might be thinking, I've heard of visualization before. What's so special about this? Well, let me tell you, Goddard's approach to visualization is different from anything I'd tried before. Here's the key. It's not just about picturing what you want. It's about experiencing it in your mind as if it's happening right now. Goddard called this imaginal acts. He said that these acts, when done correctly, could actually shape your reality. So, how did I apply this? I started with something big, visualizing myself as a successful entrepreneur. Every night before bed, I'd close my eyes and create a vivid scene in my mind. I imagined myself sitting in a beautiful office, looking at bank statements showing millions of dollars. I could feel the leather of my chair, smell the coffee on my desk, hear the buzz of my team working outside. But here's the crucial part. I didn't just see these things. I felt them. I felt the pride of building a successful business. I felt the security of financial abundance. I felt the joy of being able to help my family and contribute to causes I cared about. At first, it was hard. My mind would wander, or I'd start thinking about my current problems. But I kept at it, night after night. Gradually, it became easier. The scenes became more vivid, the feelings more real. And then, things started happening in my real life. I got an idea for a business that excited me. I met someone at a networking event who became a key mentor. Opportunities seemed to appear out of nowhere. Now, I'm not saying that just visualizing made all this happen magically, but it changed how I thought and acted. I started seeing opportunities I might have missed before. I had the confidence to take risks I wouldn't have dared to earlier. One specific example stands out. I had visualized giving a presentation to a room full of investors pitching my business idea. In my visualization, they loved it and decided to invest. A month later, I got an opportunity to pitch at a startup event. Because I had practiced so many times in my mind, I felt prepared and confident. And guess what? It went almost exactly like my visualization. I walked out of there with my first major investor, but it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were times when my visualizations didn't seem to be working. I'd imagined success, but in reality, I was still struggling. During these moments, I learned another key lesson from Goddard: persistence. Goddard taught that you need to keep up your imaginal acts even when your current reality contradicts them. He said that your imaginal acts were planting seeds and you needed to give them time to grow. So I kept at it, even on days when it felt pointless. And over time, I started to see bigger and bigger results. My business grew, my income increased. Opportunities I couldn't have imagined before started coming my way. The most important thing I learned about visualization is this: it's not just a mental exercise, it actually changes you. When you consistently visualize yourself as successful, confident, and abundant, you start to embody those qualities in your daily life. And that's when the real magic happens. The next crucial technique I learned from Neville Goddard was what he called feeling is the secret. This was a game changer for me, and it might be for you too. Goddard taught that it's not enough to just picture what you want. You have to feel it. You have to experience the emotion you would feel if your desire was already fulfilled. This, he said, is what really brings your desires into reality. When I first heard this, I was skeptical. How could feeling something make it real? But I decided to give it a try. I started with my goal of financial abundance. Instead of just visualizing money, I focused on feeling how I would feel if I were already financially free. I imagined the relief of not worrying about bills, the joy of being able to help my family, the excitement of planning a vacation without stressing about the cost. At first, it was challenging. My current financial situation kept intruding, making it hard to genuinely feel abundant. But I kept practicing. I take a few minutes each day to really immerse myself in these feelings. Gradually, something interesting started to happen. Even though my bank account hadn't changed yet, I started feeling more relaxed about money. I felt more confident in my ability to earn and manage it. This shift in feelings led to a shift in my actions. I started making better financial decisions. I felt confident enough to invest in myself and my business. I even negotiated a raise at my day job, something I'd always been too scared to do before. One particular moment stands out. I had been feeling financial abundance for about 2 months when I got an unexpected tax bill. In the past, this would have sent me into a panic. But this time, I felt calm. I had a sense that I could handle it, that everything would work out. And it did. Within a week, a new client opportunity came up that more than covered the bill. But feeling is the secret isn't just about money. I applied this technique to all areas of my life. I focused on feeling healthy and energetic and found myself naturally making better choices about food and exercise. I focused on feeling loved and connected, and my relationships improved. The key, I found, was to make these feelings as real and vivid as possible. Goddard talked about bringing all your senses into play. So if I was feeling financial abundance, I'd imagine the touch of new clothes I could afford, the taste of a celebratory meal, the sound of waves on a beach vacation. One thing that really helped was keeping a feeling journal. Each day, I'd write down not just what I wanted, but how it would feel to have it. I'd describe the emotions in detail. This helped me get clearer on what I really wanted and made the feelings more accessible when I needed them. But here's something important. This technique isn't about forcing positive feelings when you're really feeling down. Goddard taught that it's okay to acknowledge your current feelings. The key is to then consciously choose to step into the feeling of your wish fulfilled, even if just for a few minutes a day. Over time, I found that this practice didn't just help me manifest specific things. It changed my overall emotional state. I became more positive, more resilient. Even when faced with challenges, I could access feelings of confidence and abundance that helped me navigate through them. Remember, the goal isn't to deny your current reality, it's to use your feelings as a bridge to the reality you want to create. As Goddard said, feel yourself into the state of the wish fulfilled. The third key technique I learned from Neville Goddard was what he called living in the end. This concept took everything I had learned about visualization and feeling to a whole new level. Living in the end means behaving, thinking, and feeling as if your desire has already been fulfilled. It's about fully embodying the person you would be if you had already achieved your goals. When I first tried this, it felt like I was play acting. I mean, how could I act like a millionaire when my bank account was nearly empty? But Goddard insisted that this was crucial. He said that by living in the end, you align yourself with the reality you want to create. So I decided to give it a shot. I started with small things. For example, I wanted to be the kind of person who was calm and confident about money. So even when bills came in, I practiced remaining calm. I would tell myself, I have more than enough to cover this. At first, it felt fake, but I kept at it. I started making decisions as if I was already financially abundant. This didn't mean spending money I didn't have. Instead, it meant approaching financial decisions with a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. For instance, when an opportunity came up to invest in a course that could help my business, my old self would have immediately said, "I can't afford that." But living in the end, I asked myself, would the successful version of me invest in this? The answer was yes, so I found a way to make it happen. This mindset shift led to real changes. I started taking more calculated risks in my business. I approached potential clients with more confidence, and amazingly, people started responding to me differently. It was like they could sense the shift in me. One of the biggest challenges with living in the end was dealing with contradictory evidence in my current reality. There were days when living as if I was already successful felt impossible. On those days, I remembered another of Goddard's teachings, the importance of perseverance. Goddard taught that when you live in the end, you might go through a period he called the Sabbath. This is a time when it seems like nothing is happening, or even that things are getting worse. But he said this was actually a sign that things were rearranging themselves in your favor. I experienced this myself. About 6 months into seriously applying these techniques, I hit a rough patch. I lost a major client, and it seemed like all my progress was undone. But instead of giving up, I doubled down on living in the end. I continued to act as if I was already successful, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. And then, almost out of nowhere, things turned around. A new opportunity came up that was even better than what I had lost. Looking back, I could see how that setback had actually cleared the way for something greater. Living in the end also changed how I interacted with others. I started talking about my goals as if they were already accomplished. Not in a boastful way, but with quiet confidence. I'd say things like, "When my business reaches 7 figures," instead of, "if my business ever succeeds." This had an interesting effect. People started treating me differently. They seemed to believe in my success as much as I did. This led to new connections, new opportunities, and new support that I hadn't had before. One of the most powerful aspects of living in the end was how it changed my daily habits. I started asking myself, what would the successful version of me do? This led me to start waking up earlier, reading more books, taking better care of my health. These small changes added up to big results over time. Living in the end isn't about denying your current reality. It's about choosing which reality you give your attention and energy to. It's about deciding to live from your desired end result rather than from your current circumstances. As I practiced this more and more, something amazing happened. The gap between my imagined end and my current reality started to close. Opportunities aligned with my goals started showing up more frequently. My income began to increase. My business started to take off. But perhaps the most significant change was internal. Living in the end gave me a sense of peace and confidence I had never experienced before. Even when faced with challenges, I felt capable of handling them. I knew that no matter what happened, I could always return to the end, to the version of myself I was creating. As I continued to apply Neville Goddard's techniques, visualization, feeling the wish fulfilled, and living in the end, I started to see more and more positive changes in my life. But there was one moment that really stands out as the turning point, the moment when I knew without a doubt that these techniques were truly powerful. It happened about a year after I first discovered Goddard's teachings. I had been consistently applying the techniques to my business and financial situation. Things were improving gradually, but I was still far from where I wanted to be. Then, one day, I got a call from a potential client. This wasn't just any client. It was a major corporation the kind of client I had always dreamed of working with but never thought I could land. They wanted to meet with me to discuss a potential project. Now, in the past, I would have been nervous, maybe even intimidated. I might have undersold myself or fumbled the presentation. But because I had been living in the end, visualizing myself as a successful entrepreneur working with big clients, I felt calm and confident. I went into that meeting embodying the successful version of myself that I had been imagining. I presented my ideas with conviction. I quoted a price that the old me would have thought was way too high. And guess what? They loved it. They not only agreed to the project, but also introduced me to several other potential clients in their network. That one contract changed everything. It gave me the financial boost I needed to really invest in growing my business. It gave me credibility in the industry that led to more high-profile clients. And most importantly, it showed me that the success I had been imagining was actually possible. But here's the thing. I realized that this opportunity didn't just fall into my lap. By consistently applying Goddard's techniques, I had been preparing myself for this moment. I had developed the confidence, the skills, and the mindset needed to seize this opportunity when it came. This turning point taught me an important lesson. Manifestation isn't just about attracting things to you. It's about becoming the kind of person who is ready and able to receive those things when they appear. After that turning point, things really started to take off. Over the next few years, my business grew exponentially. I went from struggling to pay my bills to generating multiple six figures and then to crossing the $1 million mark. But it wasn't just about the money. I found myself living the life I had been visualizing. I was working on projects I was passionate about, with clients I admired. I had the freedom to travel, to spend time with my family, to pursue hobbies and interests outside of work. One of the most rewarding aspects was being able to give back. I was able to donate to causes I cared about, to help family members in need, and to create job opportunities for others through my business. I also noticed that my success seemed to have a ripple effect. Friends and colleagues who saw my transformation started asking for advice. As I shared what I had learned from Goddard, I saw others start to apply these principles and achieve their own successes. But I want to be clear. This wasn't about sitting back and waiting for money to magically appear. Applying Goddard's techniques led me to take inspired action. I worked hard, but it was joyful work because it was aligned with my vision. I took risks, but they were calculated risks because I had developed confidence in myself and my abilities. Consistency is key. The most powerful results came from applying these techniques consistently, day after day, even when it seemed like nothing was happening. It's not just about the end goal. While manifesting financial success was amazing, the real value was in who I became in the process. I developed confidence, resilience, and a positive mindset that benefited all areas of my life. Mindset is everything. Changing my internal world, my thoughts, feelings, and beliefs was what led to changes in my external reality. Action is still important. Goddard's techniques aren't about magical thinking. They're about aligning your inner world with your outer actions to create powerful results. It's a lifelong practice. Even after achieving financial success, I continue to use these techniques. There's always room for growth, always new goals to manifest. As I wrap up this story, I want to emphasize something important. The journey I've shared with you isn't just about manifesting millions. It's about discovering the incredible power we all have within us to shape our reality. When I first stumbled upon Neville Goddard's teachings, I was broke, stressed, and feeling hopeless. I never imagined that a few years later, I'd be running a successful business, financially free, and living a life that once seemed like an impossible dream. But here's the thing. There's nothing special about me. The techniques I used, the principles I applied, they're available to anyone. You have the same power within you. You have an imagination that can create worlds. You have the ability to shape your reality through your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. So if you're struggling right now, if you're feeling stuck or hopeless, I want you to know that change is possible. It might not happen overnight, but with consistent practice and faith in the process, you can transform your life just like I did. Remember, start small. Begin with visualizing and feeling small improvements in your life. As you see results, your faith will grow, and you can apply these techniques to bigger goals. Don't be discouraged if things don't change immediately. Remember the principle of the Sabbath. Sometimes it might seem like nothing is happening, or things are even getting worse. But this is often a sign that big changes are on the horizon. Most importantly, enjoy the journey. The process of applying these techniques, of consciously creating your reality, is incredibly empowering and fulfilling in itself. You have within you everything you need to create the life you desire. Your imagination is the blueprint, your feelings are the building materials, and your persistent faith is the construction crew. So dream big, feel deeply, and live boldly from the end you desire. Thank you for allowing me to share my story with you. I hope it has inspired you to explore your own power of manifestation. Remember, if I could do it, so can you. Your journey to abundance starts now, in this very moment. Embrace it and watch as your world transforms before your eyes.